everybody, and welcome to another spoiler review episode for Loki from the
Geek
Buddies.
Hey! And look, we are here to talk about episode 2 of Loki. So many incredible things happen in that episode. So many things to talk about. So many philosophical discussions. It talks about existentialism. Perhaps religion, a little subversive conversation about religion was thrown in here, but also some great chasing of the Loki variant that was thrown in throughout this, and also Loki confronting another Loki. So much that happened in this episode. We're going to talk about it all here on this spoiler review episode of the Geek Buddies. And look, let's go around and introduce ourselves. I am the Outlaw John Rocha, writer, producer, and host. Michael?
I am Michael Vogel, writer and producer of animated TV shows and movies.
Shan?
And this is Shannon McClung. I'm an animation writer and a television actor where you may have seen me on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, The Goldbergs, and Silicon Valley.
And to our everlasting gratitude, Emma Fyffe is back to join us here for episode 2 and for the rest of the run of Loki. Emma, we missed you last week. So glad to have you back. What have you been doing? What's up in your world? How excited are you to talk about this?
Oh, I'm so excited to talk about Loki, mostly because a lot of this episode I feel like was playing into and exploring some of the aspects of Loki as seen in Norse mythology, which I'm super into. And also, last week I was busy prepping for E3, which is the big video game trade show convention. So I was working that for the last 4 days, lots of 12-hour days. I'm real tired, but I'm real ready to talk about some trickster gods.
Let's do it. Let's do it. You can watch her content and her coverage on that Watch Ven on the Watch Ven channel and also on the TikTok Watch Ven as well.
We were the official broadcast partners for TikTok. It was pretty cool.
It was awesome. I watched one of the videos where you came through the curtain and you were talking about the games. That was a pretty cool video. So there you go. A lot of great content there from the people over there at Watch Ven, including Emma Fyffe. All right, anyway, we're going to get into episode 2 here of Loki. This is one of your last spoiler, warnings that we're going to be spoiling the episode, just in case you didn't look at the title or didn't hear me say spoiler earlier. We are going to spoil the episode, so if you haven't seen it, go watch it, then pick up right where you left off here. Let's start with you, Mikey. Overall, what is your thoughts about this second episode of Loki?
Overall, it was a lot to live up to after last week. I was very and we dove into the episode. I thought it was great. What I am most excited about overall is that I just assumed that we were going to get a 6-episode run of Loki working with the TVA and trying to hunt down his variant. And not only did they jump through all of that in the second episode, they went ahead and just brought us to the multiverse of madness already, and we've got 4 episodes left. So we are already off the map of my expectations. And I was saying to my brother earlier as we were talking about the episode, my favorite thing as a nerd, as a fan, as a writer, is when a show leaves me breathless to catch up. Because I'm the guy who always sits there and goes, okay, I feel like this is where we're going, and eventually we're going to get to this. And so when an episode blows by all my expectations and goes off the map, I get very, very thrilled, and this episode has done that, and I just have no idea where we're going next, and that's an amazing feeling.
That's for sure. Yeah, The Variant is the name of this episode, directed again by Kate Herron, who I think is directing all the episodes in this season. Emma, Elisa Karasik, Michael Waldron, who of course is the executive producer and creator of the series, in charge of this episode as well. What did you think about this one? We got to meet the second Loki here in this one. We also got more of Mobius and his relationship with Loki. Oh, maybe. Yeah, sure. Fair. We got to see so much of that. What did you think of this episode?
So what was really satisfying for me about this episode is I felt like it really earned the ending, if that makes any sense, because it is one of those things, because, Michael brings up a good point of, it was really thrilling that we just got to, okay, we found the variant immediately, instead of us just constantly hopping around through time, Loki trying to figure out where the variant is. No, Loki's super clever. He figures it out very quickly, but not in a way that felt Mary Sue-ish, if you will. Like, sometimes I can get really frustrated when a protagonist is too clever, but I think they balanced it really well, particularly when there was the whole thing where there was the setup in the tent at the Renaissance Fair, and our Loki, who we're following, was stalling and trying to say, like, oh, this is what a Loki would do, and Loki's outside waiting for you, and Owen Wilson basically calls him out, and he's like, yeah, no, he's lying, let's go. And so then, and they alluded so much to the variations of the character of Loki, which is something that draws its inspiration, it's sourced from the source material for Loki, which is, the character as he appears in Norse mythology, or sort of more accurately as they appear in Norse mythology. And so it really, like, the ending to me, I guessed the ending based on what happened throughout the episode, and not in a I saw that coming sort of way, in a I think I know where they're going sort of way. And then it was a really nice payoff at the end.
That's nice. Yeah, we're going to rely on you definitely for any of the Norse mythology references or any Norse mythology stuff here going on in the episode. So please feel free to chime in at any point, Emma, about that. Appreciate that myself, to get a little more knowledge about that. Shannon, I'm sure you were having some PTSD seeing these Ren Fair openings here, but what did you think overall about this? You're no fan of Ren Fairs, but what do you think about this overall episode itself?
John, Ren Fairs are hot. They're dusty. Never okay. Sorry, the episode. Yes, no. I thought it was. I thought it was dynamite. It's interesting because as much of Falcon and Winter Soldier that I did like, it seems like Loki's kind of doing the reverse method, and that every episode is packed full of stuff. And we are on a train, just full speed ahead. Super, super enjoyable. I mean, the chemistry that Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston have together is just off the charts. I mean, Owen Wilson has this amazing ability to turn his dial slightly to the left, slightly to the right, and you get an entirely different color of his character. And it's so incredibly enjoying to watch. And Tom Hiddleston, he's just knocking it out of the park. I mean, you see him play this range of emotions. You can see he's having a blast. I imagine this show was probably an incredible headache to write, but an incredible blast to perform.
Yeah, and you sense, because I think only Owen Wilson can write for Owen Wilson. Maybe his brother can write for Owen Wilson as well. But when you see Owen Wilson do the Owen Wilson things that he does in this show, you've seen him do in other movies and other pieces of media. It's been a long time since we've seen him do his thing, so it's very refreshing to see him do his thing again and add those little back and forths with him. And you sense that him and Hiddleston might be kind of playing a little ping pong, a little tennis with each other that's outside the script. And I love that. It gives it a more natural flow to it. You sense there's a reality to their connection, and I appreciate that madly. So that was a lot of fun to enjoy in this one. And I like that this one kept me guessing. Even watching it a second time for preparation for the show, I was still like, oh, that's right. Yes. Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm still catching things left and right, paying attention to certain code words and certain things on the screen and all of that. So it's a lot of fun. And I think it's only 6 episodes. If they just had them talk for 6 episodes in a room, I think I'd be transfixed the whole time. My dinner with Andre, my dinner with Loki, I would be down with that.
I mean, 20 minutes into the episode, before we found out that we were going to have a callback to the Jet Ski magazine, I was just kind of like, did he ad-lib that? Did he say, leave my Jet Ski magazine alone? Yeah. Did they find a Jet Ski magazine to give to Hiddleston after that to shoot? Because it's so random.
Right.
I do think, to that point, I agree with Johnny that it all feels very off the cuff, that the chemistry between them is so natural that it almost feels like they're ad-libbing. Given the nature of this show and the fact that everything is seemingly so important and specific, I actually doubt there is a lot of ad-libbing here. I think they're saying exactly what is scripted to say, because, as we'll get into in this, we're back in WandaVision territory a little bit. Not that everything means something, but much more so than Falcon and Winter Soldier, which was very kind of down the line, and everybody kind of said what they meant, and that's what it was. And there weren't a lot of secrets. I think there are secrets within the TVA. I think there are clearly secrets with the new female variant character who is probably Lady Loki, but maybe not. And I think that there's a lot of reveals that are coming down the pipe. So I think that a lot of the talk about to Shannon's point, the talk about the Jet magazine was important to a later scene. So I think it's all very, very tightly scripted.
Oh yeah, I don't doubt that this title. Perhaps I should reword that. I don't mean ad-libbing in terms of like, hey, go riff and whatever. I mean more like, hey, let me. What if I say it like this? What if I say like? I think it's more like that to make it feel very much owned by Owen Wilson. Emma, did you want to add something before we start?
No, I just was going to say that just along those lines of the Owen Wilson character is Mobius, like really, what a treasure. That's just all I wanted to say is that Owen Wilson is a treasure, and I'm down for just Loki and Mobius talking in a room.
Absolutely, Emma.
It'd be fascinating.
Let's do it. All right, let's start this thing off here. The episode is called The Variant, as I said. We start off in a Ren Fair in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. I love it. Emma, I've got a feeling you've been to a few Ren Fairs, so I'm sure this must have brought some memories back for you a little bit. The time portal opens and the TVA people come through. They're led by Hunter C20 here. They walk past a Ren Fair person. Very funny exchange about how they look kind of anachronistic, and some of us rely on this for our livelihood. That little shot there, but then they walk into a tent. They're clearly looking for something here, a time variance issue here, and they realize quickly that it's a trap. Then we hear this overhead voiceover about a princess who is about to be in a great battle, and if the princess will prevail. And then what do we get? Holding out for a hero, as if He-Man, the Masters Unlimited didn't get us back into Bonnie Tyler's Holding Out for a Hero. We're back into this song again. Of course, you can find it on the Footloose soundtrack from the 1980s. Not that remix. And then just then she gets taken over, we imagine, by the Loki variant. She battles her entire team until there's one person left standing. Then all of a sudden she drops down as if she's been exhausted from being possessed. The last one standing turns around and it is killed immediately by a hooded figure. And the hooded person opens a portal door and takes the female commander, takes C20 with them. We find out, of course, later that it's possibly Lady Loki. So with her there. So Michael, great beginning. Ren Fair, time variance, battles here, clearly showing that she can take over people. This is an interesting amount of seeds they're dropping here for what we're going to see pay off later on in the episode.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's interesting to choose a Ren Fair, which is by its very nature anachronistic. It's just like a fun little nod to the show. Like they could have said it anywhere, but to take something that is purposely made to look like one time, that is placed at a different time, and in a show where we are jumping through times, like it was just a great kind of fun way to open everything up, which I appreciated. So when they go in there, I mean, it's a great set piece. It's a great way to start the show. Really cool space. Holding Out for a Hero, I do think might be one of the all-time great songs in history.
Absolutely.
And whether it is used in the Masters of the Universe animated trailer, whether it's used at the end of Shrek 2, whether it's used here, like it's always a banger. Yeah. It always works. It always makes whatever you're watching that much cooler. So the other part about it, though, and again, not that I'm going like super paranoid tinfoil hat here, but I do wonder. We are led to believe that the TVA are the good guys and that this variant is a bad guy because Loki's a bad guy. But when we really get into what's going down here, I don't know that this person is necessarily going to be our ultimate villain. And I wonder if the use of holding out for a hero while we have this whole scene go is not maybe a little hint that maybe this isn't necessarily our antagonist.
Oh, that's a great point. Yeah, absolutely. Good speculation there, Mike, for sure. We're definitely going to see tables, turns, and twists and turns throughout this whole thing for sure. Emma, what do you think about this opening? What do you think about the Ren Fair crack there, and also about the battle here and what we might be seeing? I mean, because she's the variant Loki is looking at the time monitor there, opening the portal door, out the door, everything like that. What do you think we got here?
Well, I will say that Holding Out for a Hero is definitely having a moment because it was also in the trailer for the new Guardians of the Galaxy game. It's truly everywhere right now. Yeah. Right. And it's super interesting. And I have to give credit to Rosie Knight, who wrote this article for Nerdist for this, that she basically was saying that it's super interesting, the use of Holding Out for a Hero here, because it is a song that most people under the age of, I would say, about 25 are more likely to know from Shrek than to know from Footloose.
Right. True.
Now, obviously, I know it from Footloose, the OG version. Also, I was in Footloose, the musical, which it's in. I love it. I love it in Shrek. And so she was basically saying it is kind of, the Ren Fair setting is kind of in line with the Shrek setting. So it could be a little bit referential in that particular case. Yeah. But yeah, I'm in agreement about the whole idea of, I think that it is making a commentary of the fact that the TVA are certainly not what they seem to be. And I think that kind of comes into play a bit later in the episode as well, when Loki's talking about the idea of if they do perfectly set the timeline right and destroy all variants, then there will be only order. There will be no chaos. And that'll be, and Loki's like, that'll be boring. And he's not wrong, because there's a lot of conversations about free will and randomness and destiny, etc. So I do think that we're going to learn more about the TVA real soon. Also, when they show up in all their armor and the woman working the Renaissance Fair says, oh, you're not dressed for the right era. It's very funny, because nowadays I feel like you would see people dressed like that at a Ren Fair. Like a Ren Fair these days, it's a cosplay free for all.
All bets off. I actually, the last time I went to a Ren Fair, I saw a group of people dressed in full Starfleet gear, but they were cosplaying as Starfleet officers who had gone back in time.
Amazing!
Like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yes, I am living for it.
Let's move to you, Shannon, on this. Look, the late great Jim Steinman, who we recently lost, wrote "Holding Out for a Hero." Also wrote so many of the Meatloaf hits that you know, and even a couple of Celine Dion hits that you might know. But his music is always grandiose and majestical, and I always liken it to like those 80s metal hardback covers of Conan, the Frank Frazetta stuff. It feels like that come to life, Shannon. And this song is huge and grandiose, but there's a line here, or there are a couple of lyrics here that talk about floods and talk about, through the wind and the chill and the rain and the storm and the flood, I can feel his approach like a fire in my blood. So we're going to be dealing with a flood later on in the episode. So very interesting stuff being laid here, possibly as a little precursor to what we're going to get. What did you think about this opening scene?
Oh, I mean, I thought it was fantastic. One, that actress, the Ren Fair woman, that is an actor named Kate Berlant, who is a dynamite comedic actress. Like, watching when she popped up, I was like, oh my gosh, is she Lady Loki? Like, that's the first thing that popped up, because she's someone of some status. I mean, she was in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. She was the box office clerk for when Margot Robbie went and saw her own movie, and she also had a recurring role on the third season of this TBS show called Search Party, which is like a really, really funny show, and she is dynamite in it. Okay. But something that kind of occurred to me, like as soon as they said, Oshkosh, Wisconsin, 1985, I'm thinking, okay, where did they go in the first episode? Okay, they went to Salina, Oklahoma. They were in France. I'm like, okay, what is Oshkosh? I'm like, are these points in time, are these leading to something for Loki, or for Lady Loki rather? And it turns out Oshkosh, Wisconsin is where Mark Gruenwald, who was a former Marvel Comics writer and editor, he's the guy that they based the look off of Mobius originally. That is his hometown, is Oshkosh, Wisconsin.
Oh wow. That's awesome. Okay. All right. And he's the writer and editor, creator for characters such as U.S. Agent and Crossbones. So, all right. That seems like an interesting connection for sure. All right. Let's move on here. Now we go back to the TVA. Loki has accepted his job, and he's working at a cubicle at a desk, and he's reading a jet ski magazine while the great Tara Strong, as Miss Minutes, is explaining to him what happens when a Nexus event branches past the red line. Very funny stuff, quizzing him and whatever. He asks if she's real or not, and she says she's a little bit of both. And then he chases her back into an old computer there, as she's a bit upset about that. But we hear about what a Nexus event, what happens when it branches past the red line. We get the information that the TVA can no longer reset a Nexus event. Once it does that, it leads to the destruction of the timeline and the end of reality. And just as we're getting that information, Mobius shows up and gives Loki a TVA jacket, and they are briefed by Hunter B-15 about what happened to C-20 and her team. They know it's a Loki variant, but they don't know what kind of Loki. The jacket, as they're having this discussion, this briefing, Loki kind of chimes in, hey, that's the other Loki. Make sure you don't shoot me. B-15, to further embarrass Loki, and this may lead to Michael's point here, that they might be the real villains here, makes him turn around so that everyone can see that Variant is stamped across the back of his jacket. B-15 calls Loki a cosmic mistake. Then we are treated to the different versions of Loki, which is awesome. I don't know who the dude is at the end of it with the beard and the weird goggles. I don't know who that is. And then we have this debate about illusion projection versus duplication casting, which is going to come into play as well. They break into two teams. Loki and Mobius go off, and everyone else goes off into a separate team. Mobius tells him that he wants an audience with the timekeepers, that Loki could have an audience with the timekeepers, that it is on the table. All right, so Emma, there's so much in here. The jet ski stuff, Miss Minutes explaining the Nexus event situation, the TVA, and how they're treating Loki and all of this, and also this idea of him wanting to meet with the timekeepers. Now we're getting this idea that Loki has a bigger plan here, don't you think?
Oh, definitely. And again, like it is something that they get into again later as he's having conversations with Mobius about sort of the nature of the timeline and a direct line versus a variant timeline that has chaos. And so it is very much in line with the character of Loki that he would want to destroy the timekeepers, thus opening up all of time and space in a way that it like, because then there wouldn't be nobody that was sort of dictating like, hey, this is how things go. And I think again it brings up that sort of moral and existential question of, is it actually right to have this is the right way of things? I mean, that therein lies the appeal of the character of Loki, who again we do see a bunch of different variations on here. The green suit Loki with the beard is that's listen, but also this is the thing is that so Loki as a entity in Norse mythology was known to be a shapeshifter and shapeshifted into all kinds of different things and wasn't always the same gender either. So it's like Loki was Loki as we know him, who's more or less the character who exists within the MCU. He's the trickster god. He is, the sort of part of the advent of Ragnarok and the downfall of Asgard. But he also, as a mare, was the mother of Odin's horse. So So it's like, again, like it's all very in line with this idea of this character who and that's even the appeal within, like, because that's one of the things that's so great about Norse mythology is it's not all black and white. Like it definitely allows for these shades of gray, and this idea that Loki brings up in this episode of, they were gods and they got lazy and stupid because they were so powerful, and so I exploited that. So again, it's like here, this for me is where we started to get that payoff. They started to set up what ended up really paying off at the end of the episode. And I do love an anachronistic sort of technology situation, which is what we're seeing at the TVA, that it all looks very old school, I mean, the technology that they're using is almost like late 70s, early 80s looking in a way. And that again, I just bring it up because Michael was saying he saw the people dressed at the Ren Fair like in Starfleet uniforms. Like it makes me think of Star Trek in the in the 60s, and it really, you know what I mean? Like it just it harkens back to that and puts it in this nice, like comfortable science fiction sort of era, which I think is very, very intentional in terms of, again, setting you up to be like, oh, isn't the TVA kind of quaint and charming? But I think it's really dark and sinister.
Yeah, fair point. Shannon, so many different versions of Loki here. We get him, this B-15 versus Loki situation is coming to a head, and you sense her shots, her cracks at him. He just kind of keeps taking it, pushes back a little bit, but keeps taking it. You wonder where this is all leading. And then, of course, we have this discussion, as we said, about illusion projection versus duplication casting. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, again, thus far, every beat of Loki is just kind of knocking it out of the park for me. Everything with Miss Minutes, it's like, okay, this is how you do exposition. This is how you get vital information across to the audience, but because you're doing it through this lens of Loki, who's having to learn this stuff and not necessarily thrilled about it, and getting through this Miss Minutes character who is delightful. And thinking like, is there more to Miss Minutes than what we think? I mean,
great point.
We get to the end of the episode. It's like, okay, there's more to most of these people than what we think. It's really interesting. I mean, I loved all of the different Loki variants that you saw. All these possible Lokis. That you had the Frost Giant Loki. You had kind of a Viking Loki. You had a monster Loki. The one that really made me laugh was it looked like. At first, I thought it was like football Loki because he's in that kind of tight spandex outfit. And I was like, oh, he's like a bicyclist.
Yeah, it's Tour de France Loki, yeah.
Or Iron Man Loki. Yeah. Because there's bicycling in the Iron Man triathlon. I mean, all of this is just, it's just so much fun. But I mean, everything with B-15 is set up so perfectly. And I mean, again, I'm just enjoying the hell out of the show.
Yeah, Michael, I was just looking up here. Apparently, the last projection, the one that I'm being all weird about, is a dead ringer for Loki in Mighty Thor Volume 3, where he has donned a Viking-esque helmet and wraps a fur shawl around his shoulder. So very interesting looks overall here. But yeah, as Shannon pointed out, this is how you do exposition. You have her drop a little bit of knowledge and then have the actual protagonist chase the exposition away. Very interesting work there. What'd you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's an important piece of information that once you go past a red line of a Nexus event, it can't be taken back because that's definitely about to come into play. But I was just thrilled to see Miss Minutes like jump off the screen, literally. I mean, she's like a real life Clippy, and it's like a great fun. Like it just it takes it to the next level, and it was hilarious. And I also think in a show that deals a lot with these bigger existential questions, him asking her like, "Are you real or are you not?" And she's like, "Kinda both." And you're like, "All right, yeah, let's just get into it." The thing about the variant that threw me a little bit, and then I went back and watched the episode is, I think we're also used to a multiverse where there's like different realities with different versions, but these are all variants. Like as far as I understand it, and I could be wrong because this is all getting into some pretty crazy stuff. Like there used to be a multiverse.
Yes.
The timekeepers came along and said, no, we're having one timeline. We're on one timeline. And when you watch that video, when Miss Minutes is narrating it and says, oh, when a variant steps off and you see someone kind of step off the timeline and the guy turns into a mean version of himself with a cup for a head, a different thing. And that's like, oh, you went off and the timeline got crazy. So all of these versions, as crazy as they look, are still versions from our timeline in some way that had to be reset. So I thought that was really interesting because like I'm so used to just the idea of a multiverse where there's a version of everything. But it was interesting to be like, oh, these are all variants of our timeline that had to get and I just think that's a really interesting kind of thing that we're dealing with as we're about to see everything kind of go crazy.
Okay. All right. Let's jump into this next section of this, and we'll combine these two. Got to run through this. We head to the Ren Fair to investigate the event. Loki says, why don't we travel to before the attack? And Mobius explains to him the Nexus event destabilized the time flow, so they have to show up in real time. One of the TVA guys quizzes Loki on reset charges, and of course, another way to get exposition to disintegrate everything in its vicinity. They are surprised that the time variant Loki has taken a hostage, something she has never done before. Then C-15 condescendingly comes back on Loki, saying that there's no way that variant got the jump on B-20. B-15 says that about C-20. Sorry about that. Yeah, and no way that could happen and what have you. And then Loki tries to explain there's a trap here and compares the TVA to Asgard, as Michael mentioned earlier in this review, saying, they're kind of cocky, they're arrogant, they don't focus on things, and that's how they're going to get taken over. Loki says the other Loki wants to join them together, but he doesn't want that. But he needs reassurances that he won't be disintegrated, and then goes one extra step to ask for an audience with the timekeepers, and that's when Mobius realizes that Loki is lying. So this whole time, B-15 is looking at the monitor there that she has, saying how many units they have left before it crosses this red line. And just as it crosses this red line, Mobius realizes that Loki's been jerking them around, and then they reset everything overall. We go back to the TVA HQ, and Mobius is with Ravonna explaining what happened. They talk about all the toys in there, and then they start discussing the progress of Loki. They debate the value of Loki, and Ravonna says only the timekeepers can debate if someone has changed who they really are. And this is starting to feel very like religion. Only God knows. Only they know. It's very, very interesting how they kind of subtly are sliding this in here. Mobius has never met the timekeepers, we find out. And Ravonna says that they are monitoring this case, so she's never seen them. So interested in this case. He tells her she tells him he has one last chance here with Loki. And then we see him point out when he signs the paperwork that it's a Franklin D. Roosevelt High School pen, and he says it must be from the analyst that she keeps on the side. So let's stop there, and then we'll pick up where we left off. Okay, so what do you think about these two kind of scenes back to back here, Shannon? Overall here,
the big thing, and I think this has been Loki throughout the MCU, is he is in control. He's in the driver's seat, and he goes just a little too far.
Always, just a little bit extra. Yeah.
Always, because at first when he's saying this, I'm like, oh, are we about to have a big action sequence? Are we going to have another action sequence inside the Ren Fair? And by the end, his monologue gets a little too performative. And that is the part that Owen Wilson catches when he's like, nope, he's lying. And I'm so interested in the character of Mobius, because, we get that next scene with him and Ravenna, and clearly they have history. Clearly, he has history with this Loki variant that they are chasing as well. And just looking inside the office, I mean, how they sort of deify the timekeepers, like how you were talking about the religion, and how the one, I didn't notice it's in the first episode, but one of those timekeepers sure does look like Kang.
Yeah.
I mean,
who Ravonna has a relationship with in the comics.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. And in the 2D, in the Miss Minutes video, I didn't really notice it, but like looking at that statue, that kind of that helmet, face-hugging helmet that he's wearing, I was like, God, is this again? Is this how we get the introduction of Kang?
Yeah, good point. What do you think, Mike, about these two scenes and what occurs here between B-15 and Loki, and then of course further on what happens here with Ravonna and having this conversation? I mean, this feels like you're talking to your boss about an employee that you've got under you, and she's saying you gotta fire him, and he's saying, no, let me have one more chance. But it's interesting, as Emma said, that they're kind of keeping you grounded in this kind of era, yet they're dealing with these massive cosmic things.
Well, and I think that's where the show makes it feel.
Can you repeat yourself, Mike? You're going in and out with your internet. Can you repeat? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was saying what makes the show kind of amazing is that it kind of takes the fantastical and makes it feel mundane, which actually, in a way,
great point,
makes it feel different and fresh, if that makes sense. It's kind of a weird way to go about it. But, as far as like, you guys all said it, but I mean, it was just what Emma said before. I felt like the whole Loki kind of giving that explanation in a lesser show, that would have been what happened. Like Loki's like, okay, I'm going to tell you what's going on. But to do this whole monologue about what's happening and build it all up and have you like, this bullshit. This bullshit. Again, just the undercutting of it actually made it more kind of fun and thrilling that you have a bunch of characters that are as smart, if not smarter, guy who always thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. Which I thought was really great. And then with the Mobius and Ravonna scene, so I do think like they brought up several times, including the Franklin Roosevelt pen, that are objects in the room that Mobius is actively pointing out that he doesn't remember getting.
A roller skate.
She's saying, oh, well, you're not the only analyst I have. And I didn't get there because of how the timers looked, but I did get there by knowing that in the comics, this character has a relationship with Kang, who travels through time.
Right.
And Mobius is an analyst who travels through time, but she has someone else who's bringing her these other objects that maybe is just another analyst, but there might be some more to it than that. And then what I found really interesting, kind of to the deification point, Johnny, that you were making, is this idea that Ravonna has immense power at the TVA, clearly, because she's doing what the timekeepers are bidding. And when Mobius is like, oh, well, what are they up to? How are they doing? And she's like, well, they are very invested in this case. They are more in, what she says, she goes, they're more invested in this than they're monitoring every aspect of this case. I've never seen them so involved. And I'm like, who's behind the curtain here? Because this wizard is not vibing to me. Like, I was like, Ravonna right now, like that something is not. We are controlling all aspects of our timeline or of this timeline based on what these 3 magical wizards, you know, as he keeps saying.
Here we go again. Keep going, Mike. Sorry about that.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Whew, okay, this was really made me nervous. But you know, we're doing all of this based on something that only Ravonna and a few others seem to have, something that is a big reveal.
Technical difficulties.
We're having it right now.
Around.
Emma, help us. Go ahead.
All right, here we go. So I did really enjoy the dramatic irony that we got of having these 2 scenes back to back, wherein Loki was basically demanding from Mobius to have an audience with the timekeepers. In the immediate next scene, we see Mobius having this conversation with Ravonna, where he reveals that he's never met the timekeepers.
Right.
Like, he's never met them. She has, certainly she has a relationship with them, but he hasn't. But also, does she ever? I mean, again, there's a lot more, I think, about Ravonna that we don't know just yet, especially in terms of her having this collection of trophies and him commenting like, oh man, I'd like to have some of these in my office and whatnot. But also, what does B-15 have? Like, she's like Javert, you know what I mean? Like in Les Miserables, like but like Javert is just like, the issue with Javert is he's so lawful good that he like can't handle pardoning somebody that's ever done anything against the law. And like, that's very much the vibe that I'm getting from this character, is that like, she is constantly in direct conflict with Loki because she's so set in what she believes to be the right thing, which again then brings back to this idea of deifying the timekeepers and this level of almost tunnel vision or narrow-mindedness that comes with it. So I am, again, this is where I first started to go, oh, there's definitely more going on here, and I don't know that Loki is wrong.
Yeah.
Like,
I think we're going to be jumping back and forth to who's right and who's wrong throughout the rest of this series.
And that's one of the things that's so well done about this series is really leaning into that nature of the character of Loki, who at times is a villain and at times is a hero and very much tends to dwell in the gray. Like, it's not even an anti-hero thing. It's Loki is very much on Loki's side, but everyone in this series, it's more, I think, a commentary on like the nature of people and their duplicitousness and how different viewpoints are not right or wrong, but in opposition to one another.
Yep. And he says that kind of later on in the episode when he says, no one who's bad is ever really fully bad, and no one who's good is ever really fully good. And that's a great lesson, I think, for a lot of people to embrace nowadays. It is. All right, let's move on here. As he's leaving the office, Mobius says if he doesn't work, Mobius will delete Loki himself. An interesting threat. Loki is waiting outside calmly it's so weird to see Loki acting like just a regular human being sitting on the couch waiting for his boss to come out so he can keep going and doing things. But Loki and Mobius, they walk. Loki tries to explain, what makes him tick and what that's why he was fooling you. I taught you what a Loki does. And Mobius doesn't want to hear any of this. And he's like sick of it. And it's so ironic because remember in the first episode, he's all about, I want to get to know you. Like, what makes you tick? And this, he's like, I don't care what makes you tick. I just want to help. I just want to catch this Loki variant. So if I got to get you an audience of timekeepers, I'll do that. If I got to lie to you, I'll do that. I don't care. You're that scared little frost giant runt of a kid, or you're something else. But whatever it is, I got to get to find out. I got to get you to help me find out where the Loki variant is. And Loki keeps claiming he's 10 steps ahead, and Mobius basically lays out his plan and all of that for him. And then Loki wants to know why he's sticking out his neck for him, and that's where he explains to him about the difference, whether he's a frost giant baby, and he'll tell him anything to get to that the Loki variant. Loki says he doesn't need his sympathy, and he goes, good, because I'm done with giving you sympathy. Mobius says it's his last chance. It takes him into a library and asks him to go over all these case files about the Loki variant, and then he goes off to get a snack. Then we cut to Loki looking through all these files, and he heads to the front desk and rings an old bell. And I saw someone commenting, that felt like Roz from Monsters Inc., which I thought was perfect. That actress was great. That old Belle was great as well. He asks, and of course, Loki being a trickster, he tries to smooth talk the librarian there, in essence, and asks for files to the creation of the TVA or the origin of time or the end of time, is turned down for them all. And it says, what files can I look at? And it goes all the way back to looking at the files of the Loki variant. And reads about the destruction of Asgard as a Class 7 apocalypse, that zero variance energy is detected, total annihilation, sees the number of casualties, and this motivates him to head to Mobius. He gets a bit of a light bulb there. Mobius is trying to have lunch, tells him, have you read all the files? He says, yes. And then he starts to explain how the Loki variant is doing this, sadly using Mobius's lunch and poor Casey's drink. He explains that the Loki variant is hiding in these apocalypses. We talk about the chaotic alterations of a predetermined outcome, and that's what he's saying, and that's how he's getting around, or he or she is getting around at this point. They don't know what sex it is, the variant is, and getting around is they're hiding in these apocalypses. So they're doing all this stuff and using these apocalypses to cover up what they're doing. And he tries to convince Mobius to take him. Mobius doesn't, to an apocalypse. Mobius doesn't want to do it. And they eventually end up in Pompeii. And we see him do all this weird stuff to try to shake up the people in Pompeii. And then that volcano explodes in 79 AD, killing all those people you must know about. Pompeii and what have you. So he is right. He stands there with a big, dumb, proud grin on his face. Michael, so much here between Loki and Mobius, but also getting to go through these case files, getting these experiences, and then figuring out that the Loki variant is hiding in the apocalypses.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is that whole scene. I mean, I love, like, even in, like, the body language and everything, like Owen Wilson's Mobius and Tom Hiddleston's Loki literally represent order and chaos. Like,
yeah,
Mobius is kind of walking straight down the hall, and Loki is all over the place. And then watching them both try and out-manipulate each other. Because, like, to your point, we know from the first episode that Mobius was like, I just want to get in your head. But now he's doing, like, he's playing bad cop. So, you know, Loki's like, he's like, you can't take that the other Loki's more powerful than you. And Loki's like, oh, it's cute that you're trying to manipulate me, but I'm 10 steps ahead of you with my plan. He's like, oh, you mean the plan to do this and this and this? It's just like watching them one-up each other is great. And then I really love, like, to Emma's point of them earning this episode, the whole concept of a Loki hiding in an apocalypse is just such a cool and brilliant idea. And Loki looking at Asgard and the destruction of Asgard, which this version of Loki doesn't know about and hasn't experienced, and having an emotional reaction, but not dwelling on that too much and making a huge thing about it, but using that as the impetus for him to figure this thing out is great. And then we've been talking a lot about exposition, but using Mobius's salad to illustrate why the apocalypse makes sense, because we've already what this event is. What? Seriously? I just watched Shannon. I just watched Shannon to get mad.
Just a couple of seconds. So just go back a couple of seconds.
Just rewind a little bit.
Yeah.
So we talk a lot about exposition.
Yeah.
And I love watching good exposition. So, like, the salad is a great way to kind of express this big idea of everything that the TVA does is, oh, well, there's a glitch in time because something's wrong with the timeline. But an apocalypse is a great hiding place because, as we see in Pompeii, you literally can do whatever you want and the TVA will never see you. And it's just using the salad as sort of the moment to sort of explain it, and then instantly going to Pompeii to show us as the audience how that works. It was a great 1-2 punch that took what otherwise could have been a super complicated idea and make it very, very clear and easy to understand.
Yeah, what do you think, Emma? It's kind of brilliant what he discovers here, and it works within the construct of the show that they're building here. And then we see him go back, and this is where we see the limits of the budget, right? They got like 10 extras. They shot an alley, basically an alley, and then the volcano in the background. Yeah, very interesting.
I loved it. It was a good solution for a television budget. I will say that much. Yeah, I mean, Loki he's like a high school theater kid. You know what I mean? Like, he's just like all flair for the dramatic, all look at me, pay attention to me. That's very much who he is on the surface. But I love in this sequence where we see him having the discovery about the existence of Ragnarok and the role that he played in it. And that we see these moments where the character is feeling vulnerable and does get emotional, because that ties him to the Loki that we know at the end of his cycle within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like, you see, that character always existed beneath the surface, because this is a Loki who all he's been through is the first Avengers film. Like, that's as far as Loki has gotten in his own timeline. And so it's really important to have those moments, because I think that is one of the things that we as the audience really love about Loki. Like, the first movie where he really gets to shine is in Avengers. And then they just do so much more with that character as time goes on. And so to see that this is who this person always was, he just hasn't lived through all the events that changed him, but he did have that emotional connection, and he does feel regret over the destruction of Asgard and Ragnarok in that moment. It's just incredible, honestly. And Tom Hiddleston, the way that he can just on a dime switch and it feels earned, it doesn't feel like it's coming out of nowhere, is just great. And that, like, it was in that emotional moment that he achieved that clarity of, oh, wait, I understand what's going on now. If you go to a place where there is an apocalypse, they can't detect anything that's going on, because the apocalypse is too big to notice anything else. Like, if there's a total loss of life, then nobody will ever know what you did. Right.
Interesting. Also, Shannon, talk to me about this, but also the first thing he mentions if he could go back to the Ragnarok situation, it's not, I would go back and hug my brother. I would get back and talk to him. No, I would go back and push Hulk off the bridge. Like, what? Is this what you want to do when you go back? So it's interesting. His pride's still upset at how the Hulk winged him around like that. That's still kind of fresh in this Loki's mind.
What's great about having a show on a streaming platform is the freedom that they have with the runtime. Like, typically with a network, you got like 42 minutes when you're doing an hour-long show. And the great character moments they have, like Loki flipping through the pages and kind of bemoaning his station as that woman in the library goes, shh. And he shushes her back. I mean, that scene, to my eye, I'm like, that actually did nothing, and it was fantastic. It was like, oh, he is so upset right now. He is so salty. And then, like, as Emma was saying, I mean, Hiddleston's ability to kind of just bounce back and forth so effortlessly. I mean, it's interesting how Owen Wilson is these little minute turns of the dial. Hiddleston's are giant turns. And again, they feel earned, they feel real. As he's kind of reading about the destruction of Asgard, if you look closely, they do mention the Revengers on there.
Yes.
And it's like in this very heavy moment as he's processing the destruction of his planet, the fact that they throw a little joke in, fantastic. And then as he is pouring the salt on, like, the great thing about Thor Ragnarok, as we've said many times before, is it allowed Tom Hiddleston and Chris Hemsworth to be funny. And as he is shaking the salt on this salad, you see him, he is just locked in to Owen Wilson. And it reminded me so much about him talking with Hemsworth when he's in the weird freaky circle, when he's like, hey, the Grandmaster's over here, maybe. I mean, it's the same sort of comedic look. And as they're in Pompeii, and he's so giddy to be doing this, and Owen Wilson is like, this is kind of in bad taste.
Well, like, isn't it great? Owen's like, can we do some bird calls? He's like, bird calls?
And the fact that he calls the goats his horned friends. And also that shot at the end as Pompeii has erupted and he puts his hands out. To me, immediately, I'm like, Iron Man 1. I mean, it's the same shot of Iron Man 1.
Great points.
With Robert Downey Jr. Yeah.
Right. That's a great point. Mike, anything more to add to this?
Yeah, well, the other thing on that whole Mobius versus Loki in Pompeii is you're also seeing, and the conversation that's coming up gets to this too, is Mobius believes everything he's been told at the TVA. You can't do this. You can't mess with time. You're absolutely there's a big when Loki's like, no, there's a big event that's going to happen. No one's going to notice. He's like, no, you're most likely wrong. Let's do just little stuff. I don't want to mess with time. And Loki shows him something that nobody at the TVA knows, like that there's loopholes in these rules that they have, and that Mobius is starting to see that not everything he's been told is accurate.
Right. He's seeing it himself.
Yeah.
Right. And remember, he hasn't seen the timekeepers or met the timekeepers, so he's taking everything on faith. We're going to get to that conversation here in a little bit for sure. So, all right, as they discover this about the variances and him and this other Loki variant hiding in the apocalypses, they realize the disasters have to be sudden and occurring. And this is where we get that Mobius, woohoo, he's excited type of thing, running around. He says, there's got to be no warnings, no survivors. They look and they go, okay, let's jump into this. Let's split this up. Gentlemen's bet. You take a look at this. I'll take a look at this. And then they end up, they get exhausted here. And then they end up discussing the Jet Ski magazine when they go back to the lunchroom. And they talk about how they talk about his obsession, Mobius' obsession with the jet ski. And he says most things in history are irrelevant and they eventually get ruined. But he sees the jet ski as the perfect marriage of form and an idea. And then Mobius also explains that he doesn't get hung on belief. And I just accept that for what it is. Loki kind of says, well, wouldn't you want to, have you ever ridden a jet ski? He's like, no, I've never ridden a jet ski. I can't ride a jet ski. I mean, I think the TVA would be upset if I rode a jet ski. So here's this little glimpse you talked about, Michael, this little glimpse. I can't do anything fun. If I do anything fun, they will get mad at me. This idea, once again, is Catholic guilt that kind of symbols of that, this idea of guilt in religion. If I do anything that makes me feel good, it's a bad thing, So it's kind of layered here in what he's saying really subtly. Then Mobius says he doesn't get hung on, as I said, in believe or not believe. He just accepts what is. How many times have you heard that? Getting into cults when we've been in this COVID situation, you hear that. I just accept what is. And he said, and Loki counters, wait, 3 magic lizards created the TVA, and you're okay with this? And then Mobius counters by detailing Loki's existence and saying, in essence, it's just as crazy as my idea. So you're hearing these two comparisons of religion here, in essence. And then he talks about how chaos is a life. And then we get into discussion about free will, how everything seems to be written. If it is, there's no such thing as free will. And Mobius says it's not exactly true. And Loki says, well, they're free here in the TVA. And Mobius says, well, the timekeepers are untangling things. And at the end of it all, once they entangle all these tangled up storylines or timelines, there will be order. And that's what he wants. He's desperate for order. And Emma, you made a great point, or order, or was it Vogel? I don't know, order and chaos. That's what they mirror in that. So you see that coming through here. Loki said, and then this is where Loki drops the line that I mentioned earlier. Loki says, no one bad is ever truly bad. No one good is ever really good. And this gives Mobius an idea. And Mobius heads to back to the files and finds the kablooey gum, which we had seen in the first episode at that church. He discovers that it was sold on Earth between 2047 and 2051. They cross-reference that with every apocalyptic event during that time. They go through all the events, and then they find Haven Hills, Alabama in 2050. A flood is supposed to happen there. Mobius goes to Ravonna to ask for a team to find this variant. Ravonna says there's not much she can do if it doesn't work out this time. But Mobius is quite excited to make this happen. All right, Emma, what do we got on this?
Okay. This is a question that I have for everybody. Do you think that the timekeepers honestly don't know about Loki's secret plan to be able to use these apocalypses to their advantage?
Good question. If you're omniscient, you should know, right?
Exactly right. If they know everything, then they do know about this. And my feeling is they do know about it. Ravonna may even know about it, given her relationship to the timekeepers, which we don't fully know the nature of at this juncture. But I do also think that, again, it is speaking to that idea, because we keep bringing up this idea of religion and cults and how you just sort of blindly follow exactly what you're told is true. And we know that Mobius has never met the timekeepers, which again speaks to a lot of blind faith and this idea. Right. And I mean, like, Loki has a certain amount of blind faith as well in terms of his own ideals with like chaos and magic and all the things that he can do as an Asgardian, but again, and then also like the whole parallel of the Asgardians being worshipped as gods. So there's definitely a lot to unpack here. I thought that it's again the whole thing with like the jet ski magazine paying off and the gum paying off. That again is like a good demonstration of how thoroughly thought out everything in this series has been. Yeah. That there are no wasted moments.
Yeah. Mike, what stood out for you in these two scenes here as we're seeing their relationship, and they almost become like a buddy cop detective duo in this situation?
Well, I read somewhere somebody said, Marvel and Disney promoted Falcon and Winter Soldier as the buddy show, as the buddy cop kind of show.
This is really, the buddy cop show.
I think it's Loki. I think Loki and Mobius, their chemistry, I think, far outshines Sam and Bucky to me. But the jet ski thing is great because they've set us up for, if we don't see Mobius on a jet ski by the end of
We're going to.
But that now, as in addition to being random and weird and fun, it actually has meaning. Now Mobius on a jet ski actually means going against everything that's supposed to just having a moment of chaos. That's amazing that they set that up.
The jet ski is now a metaphor for thinking for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, free will.
And that's really cool. The whole conversation between them was just so full. I mean, John, you did a really great job of like covering all of it, but just like
I hope so. It was a lot. I hope so.
No, you did good. You did good. But like, just this whole kind of debate and discussion about what you believe, why you believe it. Mobius says, "I just accept it," and Loki as a character anything and is always pushing against it. And to answer Emma's question, I don't think the timekeepers know what the plan is, because I don't think they know anything that they're saying they know. I think just like the wizard in Wizard of Oz.
Okay, I like that theory too.
Everyone thought Oz was the great and powerful, but he was just, like the timekeepers have everyone to be these true believers who just accept what is.
Okay. Yep. I can appreciate that theory as well.
And so they have this whole army that is keeping time orderly, but now you've got Loki and his variant in the mix. And I think as they sort of add chaos to this, I think we're going to discover that, who are these three that are controlling time, and do they really deserve it, or even the fuck they're talking about?
Yeah, and listen, Michael, in every, how can I say this correctly? I don't want to offend anybody who's listening and watching, but in every cult or religion, there is that one section of it that is militaristic in their beliefs. And I think Hunter B-15 represents that. That's why Loki irritates her the way he does. That's why Loki represents the destruction of this order that she has worked hard to firmly make happen. There's always that militant side or that security side of things. I was watching the Johnstown massacre. They had that one or a couple of people who were there who shot those Congress people and reporters who were going to report about what was happening there with Jim Jones. So there is always that section that keeps you in line and threatens people to stay in line. So maybe she represents that, or the hunters represent that overall. Shannon, what do you think about all this as we were exploring it here and all the concepts that were brought up in these conversations?
I mean, I think Mike and Emma did a pretty good job. I was kind of with Vogel. I'm like, I don't think they're omniscient. I don't think if you actually do know everything, you hide away. I think if you know everything, you present. Like you're out there in front of your people. But I think this also leans into Ravonna. Because she either knows more than she is letting on, which is my guess, or she is just sort of blindly following these three space lizards, which I don't think she is.
I don't think she is either.
I think she very, very possibly, I think the Timekeepers and Ravonna could end up being the villains of this.
Yeah.
And as far as what you were talking about with the hunters being sort of that militaristic side, in the credits, there's a sort of like a break room flyer. and it says analysts and hunters working together. So there is a very distinct difference between these two sects of the TVA, and I think that they put that stuff up very deliberately.
Yeah, great points. All right, let's keep going here. Mobius is excited, as I said. He's so excited that he starts to give weapons to Loki, to which B-15 says, absolutely not. And then which I think is a great moment. And it's his little rapiers there, whatever. B-15 briefs them about people hiding in, because they're heading over to this place in the city in Alabama in 2050 for this flood. He briefs them about people hiding in what, in essence, to me, is a Walmart. It's called Roxcart, which I think is a reference to Roxcore in the comics. So,
the Roxxon Corporation, for sure.
Yeah, the Roxxon Corporation. That's it. Yeah, she talks about the fact that the Loki variant is stealing the time chargers. They walk into Roxcart, and it's in the middle of the rain and the flood and all that's happening. And Loki uses his magic to dry his clothes, and she's like, what is that? And so we're seeing that he can use his magic out in this area. B-15 says Loki, they start to break up, and Mobius tries to bring Loki with him. B-15 says, oh, hell no, he's coming with me. And he uses that silver tongue again to try to be like, oh, no, I'll be all right. I got to earn my trust and blah, blah, blah. And Mobius says, why do people you can't trust always say, trust me? Are they the ones always saying that? We pan to the hooded Loki, who was watching through the security feeds, them coming into Roxcart, and she set a 20-minute timer. Loki and B-15 come upon a guy who is shopping for plants out of nowhere, says it's the hurricane sale. The azaleas are half off. They are suspicious of this guy, and we see a flash of green across the guy's eyes, and as B-15 grabs him, she is taken over by essentially this rogue Loki, like we saw earlier in the show, to Hunter C-20. Loki and now the Loki variant start to communicate over who is the real Loki, which reminded me of Invincible, with the two clones arguing over who is the real clone and who is the original. Hank from Roxcart comes in and talks to them, and another TVA guy comes in to show them that C-20 is there. That's later on with Mobius. Hank from Roxcart comes in, is that they go over, and C-20 is just repeating over and over again that it's real, and that she has given up the information of where the timekeepers are and who the timekeepers are to this Loki variant. We go back to the Lokis. Then a guy comes up out of nowhere randomly, this very nice customer service guy who works for Roxcart, saying he wants to help, and then Loki is the variant Loki is transferred onto him. By the way, I made a note here. The music cues here are excellent. The tense, random beats that are playing underneath. You know, there's not a whole string quartet. It's just boom, boom, and I think it's brilliant the way they're doing that. Anyway, Loki challenges the other Loki to show his face. Loki tells the other Loki that he's going to overthrow the timekeepers and could use a qualified lieutenant, which makes the other Loki laugh. And also the other Loki hates being called Loki, and she doesn't want to rule the TVA. And then B-15 wakes up after having been, kind of possessed and then dropped to the floor. We go back to the Lokis. Loki sees the bombs, and just then he is getting his butt kicked by another human being that's taken over Loki. They battle, and Loki tells the other Loki to stop hiding. She says she has shit to do and tosses him onto the ground. B-15 finds Mobius, and they go looking for Loki. Loki walks up to the female Loki, who releases the control of the bigger dude, and then we see the Loki variant, and it is a woman who says, this isn't about you, which is something that was said in first episode as well. Connective tissues there. And just then, all the time reset charges go up at the same time and disappear through time portals. Mobius asks where they're going. We go back to TVA HQ, and they scream that somebody has bombed the sacred timeline. Ravonna grabs her weapon, and all these TVA guards run through the time doors. We head back to the Roxcart that is now bathed in red. The female Loki opens up a time portal, and as Mobius and goes through it, and as Mobius and B-15 run up, Loki, the original Loki, escapes into the time portal door after her. Shannon, you're the action guy. Talk to me about this whole sequence in Roxcart. What do you think about everything that happened here? And a poor C-20, what happened to her?
Well, first off, those azaleas were 50% off. That sign is right there. It may not have been the hurricane sale, but they were on sale.
Great.
That's some good shopping. Good looking out.
Watching Loki talk with the variant Loki, who they've been the enchanted, who's enchanted the public. It reminded me of that old Denzel Washington movie, Fallen. How a demon passes from body to body by touching, and how they had this great chase scene. And while this wasn't a chase by any means, it was still really fun to watch the variant spirit kind of jump from one body to the next, especially at the beginning when the spirit goes into B-15. Because there is that moment where they have that kind of that smile, that Loki smile off, which was just dynamite. The big country guy who's tossing Loki around, that is a former Universal stuntman who used to work at the Waterworld show named Hawk Waltz, who I don't know if he lives in Atlanta permanently now, but he's a guy that I used to see at Universal all the time. I was like, good awesome for him. There's also another one of the Minutemen is another former Universal stunt person named Michelle Rose. And she actually doubled Scarlet Witch for Endgame. But yeah, the whole sequence was just amazing. I mean, leading into Roxcart, I mean, if you're from the South, you've seen these storms, and it was just like, this feels like I'm at home right now. And the moment where Lady Loki says, "This isn't about you," that made me think of Doctor Strange and the Ancient One right away. That you see these parallels between these two magic users and how they both kind of have to deal with the fact that whatever is happening is maybe outside their purview because they're a little self-involved.
Yeah. All right, Michael, what did you think about all of this that we got here, the exchanges between the Loki variant and Loki? And you've been saying that we don't know yet if that's actually Lady Loki. So talk to me about what you think about everything that happened here in the sequence.
Well, first of all, I want it to be Lady Loki because Lady Loki's awesome. But some interesting things. So a couple things that were said. So first of all, the entire concept of what this variant's doing, which is kind of enchanting someone and kind of taking over their body, is not something that Loki in our MCU does. He can take control of people using the Mind Stone in Avengers. And they've made it very clear that he understands the distinction between illusions and the other thing that he said, duplication. Thank you. But the touching someone and taking them over is not a Loki power. It is a power of Enchantress, who we can talk about in a second. But and he actually does say.
Not Enchantress, a different Enchantress.
Different Enchantress. But he does say when she's doing that, he says enchantment. He's like clever but cowardly. And that's when she says, more cowardly than joining the TVA. But then when she does say, don't call me Loki. That's, she does say, I thought the TVA, they're very purposely playing with us, and it could go either way. Because she does say, and here I was thinking the TVA chose a smarter version of me. So that leans towards Lady Loki. But when he says Loki and she says, don't call me that leans away from it. And he actually goes out of his way during the fight scene to say, I would never treat myself this way.
Yeah, good point.
So they're playing in different ways. So for people who are not like super comic book nerds, there is a Lady Loki. There was a whole arc in the comics where Thor had to go find.
Say that again. Thor. Sorry, Mike. Go back a few seconds.
There was an arc in the comics called New Asgardians, where Thor had to go re-find all the Asgardians on Earth. And in this version, Loki took, as Emma was saying, in classic Norse mythology, Loki is pansexual and can be whatever they want to be. And so for a long time in the comics, Loki was female, and Lady Loki was very popular and very awesome. But while Loki was Lady Loki, she also gave magical powers to a character called Sylvie Lushton, made her think she was Asgardian. She became a character known as Enchantress, then kind of became a sometimes villain, sometimes what is another universe that has ties to Loki could almost be seen as like a child of Loki in some almost you could make that leap. And so because of the enchantment power and because of sort of some of those lines sounding a little weird, there's a lot of people that are thinking, oh, is this Lady Loki or is this Sylvie? You could go either way. So it's an interesting thing. But with all that being said, so all of that happening really interesting. Obviously, whether this is a variant of Loki or something else that we'll discover,
yeah,
a big plan. Much bigger than Loki's plan. Like Loki's plan is I'm going to take over the TVA, and based on what she does, it very much sees like fuck taking over the TVA. I'm blowing this all up. Like I am crazy, and it looks like. Based on how quickly all of those Nexus lines were going at the very end of the episode, it looks like she's going to succeed and bring us to that multiverse of madness that we've been hearing so much about.
Yeah. What do you think, Emma?
So it's really interesting, this whole idea of Enchantress, because there is a character in Marvel Comics called Enchantress that dates back to the 60s, who has ties to, and they discuss this idea that she bears a lot of similarities to and is sometimes referred to as Freya, who is a goddess in Norse mythology. And she bears a resemblance to her. She is supposed to be blonde and very beautiful. And Enchantress, that version of her, she wears green like Loki does. And she wears a small crown that is kind of reminiscent of the little horn crown that we saw her wearing. So again, like it makes sense that it could be Loki because of the whole idea of Loki being like pansexual and whatever they want to be, whatever sort of appearance they want to take on, whatever sort of mammal they want to be, quite frankly, they can be. But that comment of I would never treat me this way does lead me to think this might not actually be Lady Loki.
Yeah, great points. And that's Sophia DiMartino, which is a British actress who's worked extensively for the last few years. Some of you might have seen her in a number of things. She's a fantastic British actress. I remember her in Silent Witness. She's also been in a show called Election Spy. She's also done something called 4 O'Clock Club. So she's been out in a number of things.
She was in Yesterday, right?
That's right.
The one where the Beatles didn't exist.
That's right. It's one of my favorite movies. That's right. She was in Yesterday for sure as well. So there's a lot of good actresses throughout this. I also want to give some love to C20, Sasha Lane. I thought Sasha Lane did a really nice job in her fighting sequence, and then when she's against there at the Rock's card, just repeating over and over again. This is interesting. This idea that she has given the information now to Lady Loki or possibly Sylvie the Enchantress to get to these timekeepers. And what do you think? Let me ask a final question as we wrap up here. What do we think happened here with these explosions and all these multiple timelines and then these portals? Where are we headed to next? Who wants to chime in first?
I mean, we know there's a multiverse of madness, and it seems like this is a pretty good catalyst for it.
Absolutely. Now Loki's disappeared through her, and this what Mobius was talking about. The timekeepers were untangling the cords at the end, the timelines at the end of the timeline. Now they might have to go back and untie these. So this could be a lot of chaos. This is exactly what he wanted, right, Mike? Start again.
We've spent 2 episodes with Loki at the TVA, kind of learning all the things he knows about the TVA. He's now gone off the grid, and he's with this female character, whether she be Enchantress or Lady Loki. And I think he's going to hear a very different version than what he's been told. And I think the ultimate arc of these 6 episodes is as multiversal chaos is reigning around us, and the TVA is trying to control it. And this variant Loki Enchantress character is trying to it or whatever it is that she's doing. Ultimately, it's going to come down to Loki making a choice and deciding what is going to happen as we move forward. And I think, knowing everything we know about Kang coming and the multiverse of madness and Spider-Man 3, I don't think that the multiverse is going to be unraveled anytime soon. But I do think that the idea of are you a hero or a villain? Is order good? Is chaos bad? Is someone truly bad who's bad? Is someone truly good who's good? All of these ideas that have been floated, I think, are going to be central to where we go. And I think ultimately the idea, look, as human beings, we all like the idea of free will better. Like we all like to believe that there's a big plan, and we like to believe that someone is like kind of setting the stage for us and that the universe is pointing us in a direction. But the second that somebody tells us that we can't make any choices of our own, we go batshit crazy. We like we like free will. We like chaos. We like the fact that we can change the world for the better. And so in this series, we are Loki. And Loki was told at the beginning in episode 1 that nothing you have ever done matters. And now he's in a position where what he does is going to matter a whole lot. And I think that's going to be really interesting to watch.
Yeah, and just like cults, this is what happens when they bring you into a cult. They cut you off from your family members and your friends. They undercut everything you thought was true so they can put in a new reality, a new way of thinking. They absolutely attack how you were as a person. They beat you down, work on your self-esteem, work on all of that to make you more conducive to accept positive reinforcement after they've broken you down and insulted you for a little bit for who you are as a person. So very interesting stuff working underneath the surface on all of this. Maybe not so underneath for some people. What do you think, Shannon, about what we might be getting here as we go forward?
Well, I think along with that analogy, John, is something that not just cults, but certain organizations do as well. They condition you to think you cannot survive without them.
Yeah.
And clearly that is how Mobius views the TVA, is that without them, it's chaos. Yeah. And so, I mean, I think ultimately, yes, Loki's going to demonstrate that he has free will. Like he was put into the universe for more than just to be a scourge to existence, but he's going to be more than that. But also, I think we're going to find out that Mobius will look differently at how he operates kind of within the TVA as well, and probably ride a jet ski.
Yes, I'm so ready for jet ski.
I mean, we've talked about this. We've talked about the score a little bit. We've not actually talked about the composer, who's Natalie Holt. Has helped out on Paddington, has done a lot of British television, but
Paddington, the ultimate.
Her score for this is just dynamite.
It's so good.
Dynamite.
So good. And the way they're using it, the sparse notes, the way they're using it is just really, really smart overall. Well, we saw Ravonna grab her weapon. So what part is she going to play here now? She is a fighter in the comics. She is a princess. She's battled. So will she be now aligning herself with Mobius, and they're going after Loki, or the Lokis, shall we say, in this situation? We'll see. And maybe Mobius is the one who sees what Ravonna does, and that may break the spell or the idea that he's had for so long, that the TVA is the path, the TVA is the truth, the timekeepers are the truth. And we, like you said, we might be seeing that jet ski. And I'm sure Funko's like, let's make a jet ski Mobius. It's got to be happening. A Funko Pop figure like that. Let's make it happen. I'm down. All right. Any final words? I think we covered everything. Any final words there, Mike?
It does make me realize, as I was just sitting here thinking, that I don't think it's an accident that What If is happening after Loki.
Yeah. I'm curious to see.
That's all I got, guys. I'm just really excited about What If.
I was going to say, I am curious to see what role Ravonna continues to play in this, because I feel like when she grabbed her weapon, it was more of just like oh boy, instead of a real moment of emergency for her. Like, she still was very composed. She just was like, well, shit, I guess I got to get involved now.
Yeah. I let him have some rope with Loki.
Yeah.
I told him this was his last chance. Now I got to get up in this thing. I feel bad for poor Casey. I don't know what Casey's up to. He must be under his desk right now, wondering what he's going to do with these multiple timelines happening for sure. We shall see. All right. That's our spoiler review for episode 2 of Loki. Thank you all so much for joining us here on YouTube or listening to us on the Geek Buddies podcast feed. Don't forget, you can always subscribe to that podcast feed. If you can't watch us on YouTube, you can always listen to us. Take us along with you wherever you download a podcast. Big shout out to Emma Fyffe. Thank you, Emma, for coming back to hang out with us. Please tell people where you're at and everything you got going on.
Yeah, I mean, you can find me all over the internet at my name, Emma Fyffe. Working on projects for then. So you can actually see me on the local news in Denver and also here in Los Angeles on KTLA on Thursdays. And then I also just did a project recently for Fandom. I produced and wrote a video called 16 Reasons to Love Final Fantasy. So please go check that out.
Nice. Yeah, check out everything Emma does. It's always great quality work, ladies and gentlemen. You learn a lot watching what she does for sure.
Thank you.
Of course. Shannon, what do we got to tell them?
Yeah, if you'd like to follow us on social media, on Twitter, it's at @geek_buddies, on Instagram at @the_geek_buddies. If you would like to follow me on social media, on Twitter, it's at @Shannon_McClung, on Instagram at Shannon the Geek Buddy. If you would like to follow Mr. Vogel, it is at MKToon. If you would like to follow Mr. Rocha, it is at The Rocha Says.
Mikey?
Listen, whichever universe you're in of all the multiverses, we're glad that you're here, and we'd like you to keep coming back. And if you want to help us out, here's some things you can do. You can smash that like button below. You can subscribe to Johnny's Outlaw Nation page. Leave us some comments down there below. Let us know what you thought of the episode. What do you think about this Lady Loki or Enchantress? What do you think is going to happen with the multiverse? Like, let us know your thoughts. Tell us where you think Loki is going. We love hearing what you guys are thinking. And if you are listening to us on Anchor or Spotify or Apple Podcasts, definitely leave some comments there. Leave us some stars, helps us go up in the rankings. And as always, the best thing that you guys can do is retweet this video, post it on your social media feeds, let everybody know that this is where all of the breakdowns of Loki are happening, that we go super deep, we go super in depth, and we love to talk about all the little details. And, we are your one-stop shop for all things MCU.
There you go. I couldn't have said it better myself. That's fantastic. All right, we're out of here. Take care of yourselves. Be well. And don't forget to join us for our Bad Batch reviews coming up later on this week. We're doing episodes 7 and 8 with Laura Kelly. And our most recent Geek Buddies episode dropped already there for you to watch as well or listen to on the podcast feed. Take care of yourselves. Be well. And we'll talk to you next time with a spoiler review episode here on the
Geek
Buddies!